The wind zipped through the canyon like a sharp blade, whistling past the red rocks and scruffy pines in northern Arizona. Snow had piled up more than usual that February, covering the desert in a quiet hush. Like a graveyard, not a place for living things. Coyotes stayed in their dens. Even the birds stopped chirping. Boone Mallister was fine with the quiet. He'd lived out here by himself for almost 10 years. Ever since the war and the sickness and stuff he never talked about. He had his cows, his dog Rufus, and a little 2-room cabin with a rusty stove and walls he'd carved himself. He didn't need anything or anyone else. That's what he kept saying to himself. But on the chillest morning of the year, as Boone got his mule ready for a trip to town, he saw something odd by his front fence. At first, he thought it was just some animal skin blown by the wind, but it didn't move like cloth. It was two-shaped. Boone squinted, stepped off his porch, and crunched through the snow in his boots. It wasn't a skin. It was a kid. A boy, maybe 10 or 11, curled up tight like a ball. His clothes were ripped and thin, his bare feet purple from the cold, his skin a warm brown, his hair black and messy, and his lips barely moved. Boone knelt down, brushing snow off the boy's face. "Hey," he said gruffly, "you alive?" The boy moved a little. His eyes fluttered open. He didn't look scared, but something worse, like he'd given up. "Please," the boy whispered, his voice scratchy. "Don't let me die out here. I can be a good son to you." Boone blinked. Those words hit him hard, like a punch. He didn't wait. He picked up the boy, who was light as a bag of feathers, and carried him inside the cabin. Boone got the stove roaring, wrapped the boy in every blanket he had, and didn't ask questions right away. He just warmed up some soup over the fire and sat close until the boy's cheeks got some color back. The boy shook for hours before he fell asleep on Boone's old cot, with Rufus watching from the corner, curious but careful. When the boy woke up, it was dark outside. Snow still fell in soft, floaty sheets. Boone handed him a wooden cup of warm water. The boy drank it with shaky hands. "What's your name?" Boone asked. The boy looked up, cautious. "Tomas," he said. "Tomas Gray." Boone nodded. "You Apache?" Tomas paused, then nodded. "My mom was—" Boone didn't push. Instead, he asked, "Where's your family?" Tomas looked down. "Gone." "All of them?" The boy nodded, his eyes getting watery. "We tried crossing the high trail after the rains. My mom said we had to keep going, but my sister got sick. Then my uncle left. Then Ma." He didn't finish. Boone's jaw got tight. "What about your dad?" Thomas looked right at him. "Don't got one. Never did." Boone grunted, leaning back. For once, he didn't know what to say. The next few days felt weird for Boone. He was used to quiet, waking up before the sun, feeding animals, fixing fences alone, and eating in the dark with just Rufus. But now there was Tomas. The boy followed him everywhere, helped chop wood, carried buckets, fed the chickens. He didn't talk much, but when he did, he was polite and paid attention. Boone noticed he limped a little. "You hurt?" he asked one evening. Tomas shrugged. "Just from sleeping on rocks too long." Boone didn't dig deeper. That night, he put an extra quilt on the cot and left an old boot by the fireplace for Tomas to find. Tomas didn't say thanks, but Boone saw his smile when he thought no one was looking. On the 5th day, Boone got the mule ready again. The snow had cleared, and supplies were low. "I'm going to town," he said. Tomas looked up from the fireplace. "Can I come?" Boone shook his head. "Too far, too cold, and you're not ready." The boy's face fell, but he didn't argue. Boone paused. "I'll bring back something." "What?" Boone just gave him a look. "You'll see." 2 days later, Boone came back with coffee, flour, salt, and a small package wrapped in brown paper. He handed it to Tomas without a word. Inside was a plain wool shirt, small and roughly sewn. It wasn't fancy, but to Tomas, it was like treasure. He put it on right away, grinning big. "It fits," he whispered. Boone grunted. "Ain't perfect, but it'll keep you warm." Tomas stood taller than Boone had ever seen. "Thank you," he said softly. Boone nodded. "Don't mention it." That night, Tomas sat by the fire long after Boone went to bed. He stared at the flames, touching the shirt's fabric. It wasn't just the warmth, it was that someone cared. He lay down on the cot and whispered to the ceiling, "I can be good. I promise. Just let me stay." Outside, the wind calmed down. The desert slept under its icy blanket, and in the little cabin, for the first time in years, both man and boy dreamed of something new. Boone got up early as always, though the air wasn't as cold now. Spring wasn't here yet, but winter's worst was over. The sky was still gray, the ground still frozen, but the birds were chirping a little. Tomas was already up, out by the barn, hauling hay to the goat pen with both arms. He moved slow but steady, determined to help. His new wool shirt was already worn at the cuffs. "You don't have to be out here so early," Boone said, walking over with 2 tin mugs of warm tea. "I like it," Thomas said. "It's quiet." Boone handed him a mug. "Sure is." They stood together, watching the goats sniff their breakfast. Rufus barked once, chased a squirrel up a fence post, then came back to sit by Tomas. "Rufus likes you," Boone said, a bit surprised. Tomas smiled, sipping his tea. "He knows I'm sticking around." Boone glanced at him. "You planning to stay then?" Tomas paused, then nodded. "If you'll let me." Boone didn't answer right away. He just watched the sun creep over the hills, lighting up the pine tops. "We'll see," he mumbled. A week went by, then 2. Tomas made himself useful. He learned faster than Boone thought he would. In days, he could chop wood neatly, fix fences, and even helped with a stubborn calf stuck in barbed wire. His quiet effort earned Boone's respect quicker than words could. Boone started saying things like, "Pass me that wrench," or "Grab that rope," without thinking stuff he hadn't said to anyone in years. And Thomas was always ready. But, more than that, Thomas watched. He studied Boone's routines, how he moved, how he fixed things, how he talked softly to the animals when he thought no one heard. One afternoon, Boone caught him in the corral, arms slightly out, mimicking how Boone approached horses, slow, steady, calm. "You planning to train them next?" Boone asked from the gate. Tomas jumped but grinned. "Just practicing," Boone nodded. "Good instincts," Tomas beamed. At night, Boone started telling stories. He didn't mean to, but when the fire was low and the wind was quiet, he'd share bits of his past, about the war, his wife Helen, the daughter they lost. He never talked about them, not even to Rufus, but Tomas listened without interrupting. Sometimes, when Boone got quiet, staring at the fire, Thomas would say something simple like, "She sounded kind," or, "I bet she liked goats." It wasn't forced, just comforting. And for Boone, that meant a lot. One morning, while fixing a loose hinge on the chicken coop, Boone asked the question he'd been holding back. "How'd you end up out here? Alone?" Tomas didn't answer right away. He tightened a nail, wiped his hands, and sat in the dirt. "My uncle left after my sister died," he said. "Said he couldn't take care of both of us. Told me to go south to Fort Bowie. Said maybe the army would feed me." Boone's jaw tightened. "But I got lost," Thomas added. "Walked the wrong way. Then the storm came." Boone nodded slowly. "You're lucky you made it." Tomas didn't look up. "I don't think it was luck." That made Boone stop. Later that day, they rode out to check the southern fence. Boone brought an old Genelmari for Tomas to ride. He thought the boy would need help saddling her. He didn't. Tomas climbed on smooth, like he'd been riding forever. "You said you didn't grow up around horses," Boone said as they rode side by side. Tomas shrugged. "I watched. I remembered." Boone studied him. "That ain't something most folks can just do." Tomas didn't reply, just looked ahead, checking the fence like he'd always belonged there. And for the first time, Boone thought maybe he did. That night, a knock came at the door. Boone hadn't heard a knock in over 2 years. Rufus growled low. Tomas froze. Boone grabbed his rifle, opened the door, and saw a tall man in a black coat on the porch. "Evening," the man said, not smiling. "You Boone Mallister?" Boone nodded. "Who's asking?" "Name's Harlan Crow. I run a cattle company out of Winslow. Heard a boy's been staying with you. Apache boy." Boone's grip on the rifle tightened. "What of it?" Harlan sniffed. "Just came to ask if he's yours or if he's stolen." Tomas stepped forward, standing behind Boone but tall in the doorway. "I ain't stolen," he said clearly. Harlan tilted his head. "You talk nice for a stray." Boone stepped forward. "He ain't a stray. He's with me." Harlan smirked. "All right then. We'll see how long that lasts." He tipped his hat and walked off into the dark. Boone slammed the door. Tomas looked up. "Who was he?" "Trouble," Boone muttered. "Best keep your boots ready." Tomas nodded, but his hands shook as he sat by the fire. That night, Boone stayed awake. He didn't want to admit it, but Tomas was more than a guest now, more than someone to feed. He was part of the routine, part of the land, part of Boone's stubborn heart. And Boone wasn't going to let anyone take that away. The days after Harlan's visit got tense. Boone didn't show it much. He did his chores like always, boots scraping the porch, hammer hitting nails, feed sacks tossed as usual. But Tomas could tell. Boone's silence was heavier, and his hand kept drifting to the rifle by the door. Tomas didn't ask questions. He just worked harder, fed the goats before dawn, fixed fences without being told, swept the barn twice a day. Anything to show he was worth keeping, worth protecting. Boone noticed, but he wasn't the type to give compliments easily. Still, one evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset over the prairie, he muttered, "You've done good." Tomas looked up. "Yeah?" Boone nodded, not looking at him. "You don't quit. That counts for a lot." Tomas felt warm inside, and it wasn't from the fire. 2 mornings later, Boone rode to town for supplies. "Stay close to the cabin," he told Tomas. "Don't wander. If you see anyone who ain't me or Rufus, get inside and lock the door." Tomas nodded seriously. "Yes, sir." Boone left early, planning to be back by sundown. But by afternoon, storm clouds rolled in. The wind rattled the shutters. Rain came down hard and fast. Tomas brought the animals in, locked the barn, and waited on the porch. Rufus growled, pacing, but it wasn't Boone riding up. It was Harlan Crow. The tall man got off his horse slowly, brushing rain from his black coat. He didn't smile. "Where's your guardian, boy?" Tomas stood his ground. "He's not here." "Figured as much," Harlan said, stepping closer. Rufus growled louder. "You know," Harlan said, "I've seen boys like you. Half-starved, half-wild, sticking to the first man who doesn't hit you. You think he'll save you?" Tomas didn't back down. He already did. That made Harlan pause. "I'm offering something better," he said. "A real place, real work, not just scraps and stories." "I'm not for sale," Tomas snapped. Harlan's eyes got dark. "That ain't your choice, son." Suddenly, Rufus lunged, teeth flashing. Harlan jumped back, pulling a pistol. But before he could aim, a rifle shot rang out. It was Boone. He stood at the edge of the clearing, rifle aimed, his face hard as stone. "Step away from the boy." Harlan lowered his gun slowly. "You sure about this, Master?" "Never been more sure." "Then you just made a new enemy." Boone cocked the rifle. "Get off my land." Harlan rode off into the storm. Boone didn't say anything, just walked to Tomas and put a hand on his shoulder. "Told you he was trouble," he said quietly. Tomas nodded, trying to hide his tears, but Boone saw them. After that day, things changed. Boone started teaching Tomas more on purpose. Not just chores, but real skills. Tracking, hunting, riding fast and steady, how to shoot, how to stand his ground. "You're not just a mouth to feed anymore," Boone said one morning, handing him a hunting knife. "You're family. That means you pull your weight and learn to protect what's yours." Tomas took the knife with both hands. "Yes, sir," Boone grinned. "Stop calling me sir. I'm not the army. What should I call you?" Boone paused, then shrugged. Boone's fine. But deep down, he wouldn't have minded Pa. Spring came for real now. The snow melted away. New grass poked up. The ranch was full of life. One afternoon, Boone took Tomas to the old corral, where a wild Mustang had been penned for weeks. The horse was jumpy, suspicious, and mean if you pushed it. "He's been watching you," Boone said. "Want to try?" Tomas stared at the horse. "Me? You've got away with them. You're calm, patient. He might listen." Tomas nodded, then climbed into the corral. For hours, he didn't talk. He didn't try to rope or ride. He just moved slowly, staying close without pushing. By sunset, the horse let him touch its side. Boone watched from the fence, his heart full. "You've got the gift, boy," he murmured. That night, Tomas asked quietly, "Why did you take me in?" Boone looked up from the fire. "You reminded me of someone," he said. "My daughter. She was stubborn, quiet, brave." "What happened to her?" Boone's eyes got dim. "Fever. Took her fast. Took my wife too." Thomas nodded. "I'm sorry." Boone didn't speak for a while. Then he said, "You gave me something to care about again. I didn't know I needed that until I found you half frozen in the snow." Tomas stared at the flames. "I'm not going anywhere," he said. Boone smiled softly. "Good." In town, people started talking how Mallister took in a native boy, trained him like a son, and how Harlan Crow wasn't done. But on the ranch, all that mattered was the daily rhythm. Feed the animals, check the fences, fix what's broken, eat by the fire. And at night, Boone started calling him son without thinking. Tomas didn't correct him. He never would. Spring turned to summer quick in Arizona. The sun got hotter. The grass grew thick, and the ranch felt more alive than it had in years. Boone and Tomas rode the fences together now, fixed what needed fixing, and joked more as the days got long. Boone wasn't a quiet shadow anymore. Tomas had brought something out of him, and Tomas was getting strong. His arms were tougher from work, his aim with the rifle steady, his eyes always sharp. He wasn't a lost boy anymore. He was someone Boone could count on. Still, there were signs, random boot prints where they shouldn't be, noises by the chicken coop at night that Rufus couldn't track. Boone felt it in his gut. Crow wasn't done. "You think he'll come back?" Tomas asked one evening as they fixed the outer gate. Boone looked out where the fence faded into the sunset. "I know men like him. They don't like hearing no." Tomas nodded, lips tight. "Then we'll be ready." Boone looked at him with quiet pride. "Yes, we will." The warning came one hot August afternoon. A rider, Boone's friend Ezra, from the general store, galloped up, kicking up dust. "Boone," he called, jumping off his horse. "They're coming." Crow and 5 others, armed. Boone didn't flinch. "How long?" "Less than an hour, maybe." They left Winslow fast. Ezra looked at Tomas. "You best hide, boy." But Tomas didn't move. "I'm not hiding." Boone put a hand on his shoulder. "He stays with me." Ezra gave Boone a hard look, then nodded. "I'll take the back trail. Fetch Sheriff Wallace." "Appreciate it." Boone and Tomas worked fast. The cabin was sturdy but small, not great for a fight. So they hid in the barn, where the slats let them shoot through and they could see the ridge. They loaded rifles, checked revolvers, and set out extra bullets. Tomas wore his hunting knife, jaw tight, shoulders tense. "You scared?" Boone asked. Tomas nodded. "A little." "Good," Boone said. "Means you're thinking." They crouched behind hay bales as hoofbeats echoed. Crow and his men rode. In fast, rifles slung, pistols at their sides. Dust rose like a curtain. Boone waited until they got off their horses. Then he stepped out of the barn, rifle on his shoulder. Tomas stood beside him. Crow sneered. "You really want to die for him?" Boone's voice was calm. "I'd rather die for him than live like you." "You don't own him." "I don't need to," Boone said. "He's my son now." Tomas stepped forward. "I choose to be here. You can't take that away." Crow raised his rifle. "Fine." Boone fired first. The shot hit Crow's shoulder. Chaos broke out. Bullets flew. Tomas ducked and fired back, hitting one man in the leg. Rufus charged, tackling another. The barn door splintered. Tomas got a scratch on his arm, but kept going. Boone covered him, taking out one shooter with perfect aim. Then silence. Dust, smoke, blood. Crow limped toward his horse, eyes burning with anger. Tomas stepped out, rifle steady. "Done," Boone said, but it was too late. Crow turned, pistol up. A shot rang out. Crow fell. Tomas lowered his rifle. "I had to," he whispered. Boone put a hand on his back. "You did what you had to." Sheriff Wallace showed up 20 minutes later with Ezra. They found Boone and Tomas bandaging wounds, Rufus limping but alive. The sheriff looked around. "That boy of yours, he's got grit." Boone nodded. "He's mine, all right." The sheriff pulled out a paper. You were right to defend yourself. Crow had warrants. This ends here. Tomas looked at Boone. So, I can stay? Boone ruffled his hair. You're not going anywhere. That fall, the ranch got stronger. Tomas helped build a new barn wall, trained the Mustang until it followed him like a friend, and got his own room in the cabin. One evening, he sat on the porch with Boone, Rufus snoozing between them. You think we'll ever leave this place? Tomas asked. Boone shook his head. Why would we? Everything we need is right here. Tomas nodded, leaning back. For the first time, he felt safe. Not just warm, not just full. Home. Boone handed him a carving knife. Here, he said, for the porch beam. Tomas looked down. What do I carve? Whatever you want this place to remember you by. Tomas thought for a bit. Then he carved a name. Just one word. Son.